just playing kind of devil's advocate here, let's say you were
Yeah.
hiring for a thumbnail designer, you'd go to a job board where YouTube people are like YouTube jobs, and then I guess it's kind of a spray and pray approach, right? Where it's thousands of applicants and sift as much as
Yeah,
possible.
so I used to have that approach, and then when I first truly got into hiring for my own company, we needed a developer, and we did all these like kind of best practices of creating a really nice job ad and so forth, and we posted it in Latvia, and we got within 2 weeks we got 3 applications, and that was really sad. So then we this that's when that was 2017 or 18 maybe. We discovered these remote job boards, and then within a few months we got like 10,000 applications for that role. And back then people, I don't think they were not yet onto this remote work wave, so we were a bit early, but yeah, you can get a ton of applications, and then it's more about being able to judge those applications. Typically you send the test assignment sooner, so you're more protective of your time. And it's interesting what you can achieve with that scale, and we made some good hires. At the same time, the very best applicants, they're typically already at a good situation. They're like, okay, I'm good. If I don't fully love my situation, at some point someone's gonna approach me, and I'll take that opportunity. I get enough pitches. So that's the other kind of thing that happening with the very best people. They're not necessarily serving the job boards, especially the most senior people, I'd say. So that's something that just has to be kept in mind. And I saw some stats somewhere. I think the source was Zipia, where they said 73% of people who are open to changing a job are not going on job boards. But they're open, but they're not like exploring proactively, because it is a painful process, right? Sending those applications, and then many companies would ghost you, or not even have an opening in that point in time. They're like, okay, at some point, so something good is going to come up, and then if you reach out to them proactively, you can be that good news that they receive. And the good thing is that you don't have a ton of competition in that moment, right? So I mean, some people they're looking actively when you reach out, but a lot of people are like, well, I was kind of thinking about it, not looking actively, but yeah, this looked pretty cool. And then it's much better to be the only option than be one of the like 10 options.
In terms of kind of the fit interview where you're judging, personality, attitude, etc., what are you looking for in kind of a good candidate there? So let's assume, 10 out of 10 technical skills. What do you look for on the other side?
Yeah, so two things that come to mind. So um, my favorite assessment is DISC. Some people have their own favorite assessments, but you can kind of know what type of person you're going for. Someone who's like maybe a bit more dominant driving, someone who's a bit more like structured, careful, someone who's a bit more like people oriented. So you kind of sometimes you just ask them to complete that personality assessment. At least for me, when I talk to thousands of people, I can kind of ask a few questions and kind of realize, okay, they're most likely in this sort of bucket, and see if that sort of personality makes sense with the role. The other thing is kind of seeing their track record and seeing how they were solving problems, how they approach it, and just asking more and more questions about what they've done in the past. And if you keep hearing more and keep hearing more things that you like, that's a great sign. That's okay. They approach some things in really creative ways. And some people who maybe have really nice kind of top line numbers, and they can say, "Oh, we grew by whatever 300%." But then when you ask them, "So how'd you do it, and what were the specific steps you took?" They don't really have a good response. You can kind of realize that, oh, there's a good chance that they were around success, but not necessarily the ones driving it. So that's another thing to kind of look out for. So those are the two things that come to mind.
Okay. Am I correct in saying for that first one, you're almost building up like a caricature of, let's say, an ideal sales guy? And then when you're
Yeah,
interviewing someone, you're just, ticking off that person.
yeah, and for my own business, what I realized that there are a few characteristics that I share with my team, and basically the one thing that comes to mind first is that we just need someone people who are meticulous, and that's like we can't do without it. That's my personality. That's what our clients expect of us, and that's the number thing we're checking for. Definitely, they need like strong, basically ability to learn and pick up things quickly. But I think that's a given for almost any role. And then maybe like a secondary thing is that we've all moved countries, we've all lived internationally, and so working for a smaller company, you need some kind of sense of adventure, but that's less what's needed for our job and more what's needed for them to be even interested in our opportunity. But this thing about being meticulous, that's something I realized recently, and might seem obvious, and it does seem obvious to me at least now. But it's like just continuously looking at people who worked out, who didn't work out, and kind of seeing the patterns there.
Okay. Test tasks are obviously hugely important to judge the test technical skills. What have you seen in the field that makes for a really good test task?
Yeah, so there, I would say three types. So number one is task specific or job specific task. So in my case, for example, I asked everyone who's joining to source some potential candidates based on a brief, because it's a really important skill. If you don't have that skill, you can forget about everything else here. If you source the wrong type of candidates, it's just not going to work. So that's the basically, if there is something like that, right? So for creative strategy, it doesn't matter if it's a creative strategist, copywriter, a creative director, they need to be able to first recognize, but also create really good scripts. So for that sort of role, you ask them to write a few scripts based on the account. So that's task specific. Then there are audit tasks where you give them basically access to some of the data and look at what basically what they see as improvements or potential things to do. So that's really good in media buying. Financial roles could be good like that, where they give them all the data, kind of, if you have someone to explain it, do that as well. And then ask them to come back with a management report, so that CEO is typically not into the weeds, and they need someone who can kind of explain what's going on. So that's a perfect test task in my mind. And the other thing that's happening there is that they're already spending some time thinking about what's currently going on, how I'd approach it. So it's also really nice for the candidate, where they can realize, oh, these are the sort of problems I see, the problems, and these are the sort of problems I can actually solve and want to be working on. And then the third type is kind of similar to audit, but slightly different, and it's creating a plan of action for the maybe first 3 months or 6 months. And that's pretty typical for marketing roles. So head of growth or something like that is kind of, or maybe head of ops even, laying out what it is that they do month by month and how they approach it. And they're like, the more detail they can give, the better, because these days it's really easy to ask ChatGPT to create a reasonably looking plan. So then you kind of look at the nuance and how deep they've gone into it, and yeah, how much they've considered for that sort of plan.
Okay. You touched on it there. How do you kind of filter for people that are using ChatGPT, or maybe even getting someone else to do the test task for them?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really, I don't think I've been in a situation where someone else has done it, especially for these like more senior roles. If they use ChatGPT and it's great output, I couldn't care less. I mean, that's awesome. Good for you. You're being efficient. If it's just kind of, sending basically ChatGPT output, that's really easy to see. So as long as it's solid work, something that meets your standard, yeah, why not? That's it's what they do on a job as well. So
Yeah.
that's great if they can use ChatGPT on a high level.
Are there any kind of red flags that when you see, you're instantly like, no, and in your, in instant decline?
So I think in the interview process, the biggest one is so first I would, it's not the first thing that I'm going for, but pretty early in the conversation I'd ask, so what has been your biggest win in this past role? And if they don't have a good answer, I guess I'll entertain them for a little bit, trying to kind of get them on the right path. But generally, if they don't have a big win, you've just been in the seat, right? You haven't really accomplished anything. So that's certainly something to look out for. And then definitely you should watch out for what I mentioned earlier. This kind of, okay, they might have a win that appears really nice, but then you start going deeper. So how'd you accomplish it, and what were the steps that you took? What was your role? What was maybe someone else's role? And trying to understand that whether they drove that success, and if they did, that's awesome. If they didn't, I mean, it still might be good for your company, but you just need to be a bit careful. And then also a revealing question is asking why they left the previous company, why they're considering leaving now, and it has to make sense. And again, talking to a lot of people, I can by now I can kind of see that, okay, this story does not make sense. That's not how things happen in reality. If everyone else was suddenly became toxic in the company, maybe it's the candidate that was actually toxic. So I mean, those things happen, and if everything else is looking great, sure, you could entertain it, but then you just become really careful.
We hired a candidate last year that was exactly that. So everything was never their fault, and they'd worked at. I've been fired from kind of 3 jobs where it was really toxic,
Yeah,
and everyone else in the business was horrible. I ignored that, so
yeah.
that's great advice.
So now you're the fourth guy on the list that's also really toxic, I bet. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And just in terms of the technical stuff, then, so would you recommend companies, once they've gone through the candidate has gone through the training material, should they be testing the new hire on that, or not? And then when should you be expecting to hit like KPIs and start introducing that kind of stuff?
Right. No, I think the best test is in the battlefield, right? So they're my employees are talking to clients from the first day, and then sometimes with publicly, sometimes privately, I just say, hey, this is what I would have said, or they send me candidates and I go through them, and sometimes I have to sometimes I archive 10%, sometimes 50%, sometimes 90%. And I'm if it's 90%, I'm really glad because that's a learning opportunity. And otherwise, like that round of outreach would have gone nowhere, right? So that means okay, there's a huge kind of learning potential there. So in terms of like hitting KPIs from my experience, someone who's like switched on and doing well. I mean, even my current employee, I was really the one that started just now. I was really pleased with how she did even on the first day for someone new. But then I think within 3 months she'll be like fully independent and ready to rock it. So I think 3 months maybe to kind of answer your question briefly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. I want to kind of flip this process on its head now and go back to the beginning. So let's say kind of a founder has come to you and said, something is wrong with the business. How do you identify the bottleneck and then decide, who the hire or what position the hire needs to be to fix that?
Yeah, and I think here you would look at what's working for other businesses. So and also like many times people just come to me with when they have that bottleneck ready. Sometimes they don't, and then I just continuously ask questions. And the more complex the business, I think e-commerce structures can be relatively simple sometimes. But for example, for a SaaS business, when you have the marketing team, you have the sales team, you have the tech team, and then the customer success and whatever else, it can get quite complicated. And then I've had sessions where I talk to business owners, and for 2 hours straight, I'm just asking a bunch of questions. And eventually, like things have to make sense. I mean, that's my approach. And then you just ask as many questions as needed to get there. So I don't know if I have like a good framework for that, but that's typically what's been working well. And I think one important thing, and that's like our company value as well. We call it seek truth, but it's like if you're able to ask these uncomfortable questions, and but with the intention of getting to the truth and getting to the root of the problem, I think that's really important. And that's something I've seen also in hiring, where over the years I've just learned that if someone comes to me and they say, hey, we need this like head of growth, when I started out, I'd be like, awesome, I can get you someone. And now I'm like, why? What are you expecting of that person? How that's going to fit into your business? So I don't have a more advanced framework than just an in-depth conversation, I'd say, for this.
Okay. And do you charge for those therapy sessions out of interest?
I guess I could, but I don't. I do lead into they typically lead into nice business for me, so I think they're worth it. But yeah, anyone's listening who has like a reasonably sized business, I'm generally like happy to chat. So reach out.
Cool. Okay, so I feel like since COVID, the world has become, or the workplace has become a lot more kind of international and globalized. Have you seen that shift, and would you agree with that kind of statement?
Yeah, 100%. So, and I think there are certain roles where it's just smart to hire outside of your country. And it might go both ways if they're like maybe customer support or video editing. That might be good in maybe Philippines or India or Pakistan or some of the kind of countries where the salaries are cheaper. And sometimes you just have to hire in the States if you want the best results. It's more expensive for sure, but you also just it's what your business needs. So I think it's gone both ways where people are generally just more they're more open to being international for sure.
Okay. And then you mentioned kind of the Philippines, India, Pakistan for
Hmm.
CS type kind of roles.
Yeah.
What other regions would you kind of recommend people look at, and are there certain kind of correlating job fields that are associated with those places?
Yeah. So my kind of number one country, that's a tiny country, like 3 million people, but specifically for e-commerce is Lithuania. So they have like at least three like nine-figure e-commerce companies. They have several eight-figure companies. So they're doing an outstanding job. Somehow it's become a talent hub. So I mean, typically you look by the company names anyway, and you can figure out which ones those are. But that's a place where I hire disproportionately, and they also have some awesome like tech startups. So they've got something right for sure. But more broadly, kind of yeah, Philippines for customer support makes sense to me. Some of the cheaper roles, maybe VAs as well, and but then kind of for I would say mid-level roles, sometimes even kind of directors and executives, but definitely Eastern Europe is a great place. You can get people with great attitude. They're hungry. They don't have as many opportunities. Um, and when they hear from you, they're really excited to kind of take it further. And then that would go for all kinds of roles from marketing to ops, maybe less so in sales, but product. Yeah, I mean, Eastern Europe is my kind of default. Latin America can be good too. Can be really nice alignment with the US. And then for these top tier roles, again, creative strategy is a good one. Where especially when you need to know the local culture a little bit and have the feel for it and kind of what would resonate with people or wouldn't. And sales, I think, can be quite similar, although it's possible to do from other countries as well. But especially creative strategy, they're typically higher than in the US, especially for these like top tier brands.
Okay. You mentioned Eastern Europe. Are there certain countries within the region that you look at a lot?
Lithuania is on top of the list. Serbia is huge. And then there's a Wikipedia page that you can Google, and it's like countries of Europe by salary. And then you can draw a line where basically there are countries with lower salaries and higher salaries, and I typically go for the countries with the lower salaries because the talent, education, it's all comparable, and especially if they work for an international company and they've been around it. Um, for the same amount of money, you can get better talent. So I'm not even necessarily looking at it as a discount. I'm just looking what can I get for my money, and you can get some just outstanding people over there. So um, basically Eastern and Southern Europe is my go-to.
Okay. What would you say? What would you recommend? Sorry, for a brand owner that's got people from a whole host of different countries. What would you recommend for them to do to kind of build team culture across different kind of people?
So, I mean, an obvious thing is that you want to be reasonable with time zones, and so you can go pretty broad, but typically it's at most 2 out of the 3. So either Americas is where you build your team, uh, Europe, or then Asia and Australia. So typically you wouldn't just go anywhere in the world. So you pick 2 out of 3. So maybe Europe and Americas is the most typical. Sometimes Europe and Asia. I've seen less of Asia and the and Americas. But you kind of want to be a bit reasonable when it comes to time zone. Make sure that there's some alignment. When it comes to those like cultural aspects, generally, kind of these my type of company that I work with is smaller in terms of team size, but definitely kind of overachieving in terms of scale that they've been able to achieve. And that, if you follow the math, it kind of means that the revenue or profit per employee is really high. And there, the kind of connecting factor is that, hey, we're all doing a really good job. We're all bringing in our A game basically. So that's the thing that is the unifying factor. And then, um, past that, yeah, I think there are probably some kind of interpersonal things that you can think about. But if you have that foundation of okay, we're all doing our very best and we're all really passionate about what we're doing, then I think, yeah, it's a really good start.
Okay. And what would you say to a business owner that was maybe in two minds about, team culture being entirely dependent on we're, A-star employees, we're going to push things on output, push the envelope and achieve versus more of a kind of balanced workplace with more of a focus on kind of team building and stuff.
Either of those can be a reasonable choice. So for me, it's just a bit hard to be around people who are not like 100% bought in. That's how I work, and that's how most founders are, and that's what they expect from their team. In that case, just be sure that you have something good to offer in return, and that it's actually worth it.
Cool. Okay, so what would you say to a founder that's across different cultures? What can they do to kind of make the machine run smoothly?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing to watch out for that's kind of organizational and maybe obvious, but should be kept in mind is where the team is based. So you just don't want to spread it out too much. So typically, there are people don't go to more than two out of the 3 parts of the world. So Americas, Europe, or Asia and Australia, just because of time zones, and you want to have some overlap between your teams. And yeah, so that's kind of an organizational but thing to watch out for. So when it comes to culture, what I've seen is that people that work with me again, they tend to have maybe smaller teams, but they're at pretty high scale. So if you kind of follow the math, and the revenue or profit per employee is pretty high, and that generally means that they're all very high performing, great output, and that's the sort of uniting thing between them. And then there might be some maybe smaller cultural differences, but if you have the foundation of okay, we're all here, we're going to do a really great job. I think that's a really solid start to building a nice company culture.
Okay. And then before we kind of start to round things off, my question here was going to be about, assuming there's a senior role opened up, how do you think about kind of promoting internally versus going externally to fill that spot?
Yeah, so I would always try to see if I have someone internally that I could promote. That's like free onboarding basically, right? And you generally want to motivate your team and give them chances to kind of up their career, and see that you can actually grow within the company. So that's basically the first thing that would cross your mind. There are cases where you can't do it. So uh, in one case, the company just might be growing too fast, and you don't have enough people that are able to do it. And kind of the very best people have already been promoted. Is essentially the situation. A different situation might be when you kind of just don't have the talent you need. You need to work on the kind of next level, and then typically you do plug someone from a company that's basically has gone through it already, and that's when it makes sense to go outside when you don't really have anyone. But at first, I would always look at the current team and see if someone could step in those shoes.
Okay. Thank you. I want to round things off by talking about AI. So I know you mentioned before, improving or increasing output and the work, especially on the creative strategy side, the uplift that you'll see from AI. Can you just talk through other roles that you think AI enhances or maybe even replaces in an ecom brand?
Yeah, so the other one that comes to mind is definitely media buying. And I think that's already happened. So when I was running Facebook ads, there was a lot of budget adjustments and kind of manual analysis, and some of that still remains. And especially for the larger brands, the ones that spend millions per month, you can squeeze. You can still squeeze out some nice juice, and the position's worth it. But for many brands who are not at this crazy scale, it makes sense to currently at least have someone who's outsourced, and that's a direct impact of AI. So that's one position where it's happened already, and I think most people are aware. There's lots of things you can do in customer support, and that's another big one. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes into video editing as well. I mean, really anything that has to do with some sort of volume is I wouldn't say at risk. It's subject to being enhanced with AI, and even in my business. So how I think about it is the things that have to happen more times are more likely to be taken over by AI. So what I mean is, for every role, you typically select more than 100 people. So that means that has to happen 100 times per hire. So probably tens of thousands times per year. That's something that AI can get really good at. But then let's say we have, just for round numbers, 100 roles, creating 100 job descriptions because there's one per role. That becomes a bit more difficult. Although there's still ways to use the AI, and then even further down the line, you only make one hire, and that's later in the process, and that's even harder to kind of use AI for. So whatever is happening a ton, I think AI can be great at learning. But these kind of decisions that have long-term consequences and don't happen that often, that's very unlikely to be replaced by AI. At least, you never know, right? A couple of years ago, we said that we're so far away, but I personally don't see that happening for a while still.